developmental disability being included in the comprehensive plan. You've been wonderful reaching out to us, offering us this opportunity. We're hoping to get additional opportunities as the time goes on. And with that, before you begin, why don't I let everyone just introduce themselves to you so you know who you're talking to today? So
Great.
I'm
Thanks,
Creighton Lean.
Chris.
I'm the co-chair of the DC Family Support Council. I have a daughter with autism and intellectual disability, and who attends St. Coletta. I self-identify as having a disability as well, but my place on this board is principally focused on Alex and people in similar situations to Alex, my daughter, making sure that they get treated with great respect, dignity, and inclusion by the DC government. Um, Catherine, what should we do? Maybe we can go around the room.
Yeah, you have enough folks to just make it really, and maybe just really quickly. And we also have some of this in registration about who, kind of what your relationship is, what brought you here. Are you professional? Are you a parent? Are you a caregiver? Are you a person with a disability? So we do have some of that information, but if you want to do that,
I do.
we could
I
do it.
want, and then we're going to turn over to Lena to run
Mhm.
everything. So, Pamela, would you like to say a few words? Pamela Johnson.
Can you all hear me? Can you
Yes.
hear me? Okay, wonderful, great. I'm Pam Johnson, the housing coordinator with DDS, and Catherine invited me to the meeting, and I'm happy to be here today to learn more about 2050.
Wonderful. We're so grateful to have you. And
Oh,
Catherine, of course, did you want to introduce yourself, Catherine? We all know you so well.
I don't know that everybody does, though, or any of us. I'm Catherine Reinhardt Mello. I work for the DC Department on Disability Services. So I'm our staff liaison for the Family Support Council.
Super. Thank you. Daisy, one of our board members, one of our council
Yes,
members.
my name is Daisy Brown, and I am, like Craig said, a board member for the Family Support Council. Um, I am a person with physical disabilities, and I have an adult son with developmental disabilities. I'm an advocate for citizens in the city who have disabilities and don't understand how to navigate the supports that they're entitled to. That's all I'll say for now.
Thank you, Daisy. I see another one of our council members, Chioma. Chioma?
I will be on off camera, intermittently. I'm Chioma Rue. Good afternoon, everybody. I am, as Craig said, a member of the Family Support Council. I'm a mother of two autistic sons who are also intellectually disabled. And I'm also the Health Justice Project Director at Advocates for Justice and Education,
Thank you
which
so
is
much.
PTI for DC.
And then we have, and forgive me, Mady, if I say your name wrong, but Mady Tanem Carney.
You said it right. Hi, I'm Mady, and I am just trying to support the cause. Basically, I founded a nonprofit, Integrated Living Opportunities, where we help individuals with disabilities transition to independent living. I stepped down in 2023, so I'm looking for more things to do. I also have another business. I still have a few clients, but not really. I took my website down because I couldn't say no to consulting for special needs planning. I'm a certified financial planner. But I just, yeah, I couldn't say no. So I ended up staying at my desk all the time, and I'd rather ride my bike. So, but I am looking for other areas to, help. So that's why I'm here to learn more.
Thank you. We're so grateful for you being here.
Uh,
Karen Kirkland. Karen?
Hi, how are you? My name is Karen Kirkland, and I work with persons with intellectual disabilities as well as mental disabilities. And I'm mostly interested in providing employment opportunities for them. I have a gentleman that I'm working with, um, and he's a quadruple amputee,
Wow.
but he wants to work. And I'm trying to find work for him, help him navigate work for him. And again, I also work with the homeless population, in terms of providing adequate housing, or so they can get, what do you think? I'm trying to think. The housing that supports their disability. I know a long time ago, when ADA first came out, right after 50 section 504, you can go in and they would redo your house so that you can reach things and do things and be able to be comfortable on your own. So really, I like to see those type of benefits extended as well.
Thank you, Karen. We're grateful you're here today. Adrian Smith. I know, Adrian, you had to go off because you weren't hearing. Can you hear now? Adrian, do you hear us? Okay. And then lastly, and forgive me, I didn't write the name.
I would maybe like to say something to Adrian. If Adrian is here, Adrian is a parent ambassador with HAE, and is a mother of a child with a disability.
Thank you, Chioma. Oh, Adrian, I see you came off mute. Are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, great. I like to share my information. I'm Adrian Smith. As Chioma mentioned, I am a parent ambassador with HAE. I'm also attending this meeting just from a parental standpoint because I do have a child with a disability, and I'm interested in finding out what other services she has available to her.
Thank
And
you.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Adrian. And then lastly, and forgive me, I should have written down your name on the phone, 202-525-0962. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Tanya Hanna. I am the parent of Gary Jones. My son has traumatic brain injury. Not really sure which area it fits under, but I believe it fits under one. Unfortunately, he incurred the injury at age 19 due to being a victim of a crime in the District of Columbia. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Tanya, you're very welcome here. And yes, part of our constituency. Thank you for being
Yeah,
here.
but
Did you want to say something?
but I'm here. I'm still going to move forward. I'm here as a parent. I'm here as a authorized rep for a program called Services My Way in the District of Columbia, and also as an advocate. Yes. So thank you so much.
Tanya, we're honored to have you. Thank you for being here. So I believe that's everybody. So, I see
There's one more person.
Christopher Tekkening. Would you like to introduce yourself? Christopher, do you hear me? Oh, there you are.
Yes, I can hear you.
Welcome, Christopher. Would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Oh, hi, my name is Christopher Tekona. I'm a community service worker. Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah, I'm a community service worker. I've been working as a community service worker since 2016, helping individuals meet their goals or attain their goals if possible in the DC area with housing, helping them with resources that will help them manage their goals in the DC area. So I'm working with Miss Keglin, Karen Keglin. So we have to promote growth among the homeless people.
Thank you, Christopher. And we're glad to have you here. So that's everyone that's here to comment today and provide testimony or input. And so with that, I'm going to turn over to our honored guests, our special guests, Alina and Nadia. Thank you for being here. We're so excited to be part of this process today.
Thanks, everybody.
We can hear you, Alina, but you just went on mute. We heard you initially.
Okay, trying that again. I think now it's better. It was echoing before. Thank you for welcoming me and Nadia into this space. I really appreciate that all of you are here to chat with us. I think what we're going to do, if it works, is to provide a little bit of information about our office. We're part of district government, but we might be an agency that you have not interacted with before. And also provide an overview about this particular project, DC 2050, and what it's about. And then we'll jump into a conversation. And the idea of the conversation is we just want to hear about essentially your lived experience as a resident of the District of Columbia, as a parent, living here, with housing, with neighborhoods. I think that would be a quick summary of what we're trying to learn. And I think this is a really great opportunity for us, because this is a community that we do not hear from a lot as part of our public engagement process. And it's a really important and unique voice to bring into the conversation. So really appreciate this opportunity. I'll also introduce myself. My name is Alina. I'm the housing planner for the Office of Planning. And I'm also a parent. I'm a parent of 2 kids, and my older son, who's 5 now, was born with a congenital brain malformation called cortical dysplasia. So I also kind of relate to some of the challenges that you're thinking through, and some of the questions that we're going to pose to this group, I think about also. Nadia, do you want to just say who you are?
I hope this doesn't echo. Hi everyone, I'm Nadia. I'm working with Alina. I'm a community planner here at the DC Office of Planning. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing and learning from you all.
So we
Okay,
welcome.
so I'm gonna jump
Looking
back
forward
in
to the-
and share. Can
Just wanted to
folks
say
see
to
my
everybody,
screen?
make
And
sure
do
that
you
you're on mute.
see
You hear me, everybody?
do you see
Alina, can
the 4th slide about what the Office of Planning is now?
I
Okay,
see it.
great.
Okay, everyone go on mute. Here, Alina.
So about our agency, so we develop plans at both the citywide and neighborhood level that are forward thinking and kind of capture the vision of what we think our neighborhoods could be in the future. And also an aspect of our work is analyzing proposals and development projects to make sure that they follow zoning regulations and align with the greater goals for the future of the district. Our team also includes historic.
Expand the screen.
Oh, good point. Thanks. Let me see if I can get it to.
So at the bottom. Yeah.
I got it. Okay, great. Our team I wanted to mention includes historic preservation. So that is also a component of what our office does. About DC 2050. So DC 2050 is a comprehensive plan for the District of Columbia that we work on every couple of decades. We are required to do this project as a result of the home rule legislation. And I think the title, a little bit comprehensive, is somewhat of a misnomer, because it doesn't actually cover really everything and anything. And the focus of the plan is, I think, in a nutshell, what gets built in the District of Columbia over the next 25 years, and where. And how we grow, and what that might look like, and how our neighborhoods might grow and change in the future. I think that would be a more directed way to summarize what the plan is focusing on. So a lot of the work focuses on housing, and a lot of what we're thinking about focuses on the type of housing that's appropriate in different parts of the District of Columbia. But other topics that are related are going to also be connected and covered in the plan, including environmental policy, rethinking what downtown might look like with all of the changes currently underway, thinking about what certain parts of the city that have federal buildings might look like in the future as the city changes. And how we could reuse some of that land and some of the buildings, and think about the future from a workforce standpoint as well, as it shifts. This is the project timeline. We're currently in the 2nd phase of the project. And essentially, we are working on gathering engagement on the future growth of the city. And one of the things that we're asking during this phase of engagement is, how should we grow? How should we grow in terms of housing? And where should new housing go? And what type of housing makes sense for different parts of the city? That's a key question that we're trying to answer. through conversations right now coming up in March. And then we will be working on the plan, taking all of that feedback that we get to create a document that will be released for public input in the fall. And then it will go to legislative approval in 27. So that's kind of a general gist of what the process looks like. In terms of engagement, we try all sorts of things and different approaches. So we have large public workshops all over the city. We have 2 that are coming up that we will invite all of you to, that will be at the MLK Library in mid-March, and I'll come back to that. We also often offer a survey, an online survey option during the time that we have public workshops happening. We show up to events all across town through pop-ups. And then what's new and different right now is we're doing this series of focus groups. And the idea for the focus group specifically is to identify some of the gaps that we've had in engagement to date and try to use the focus groups as an opportunity to reach and talk to people who are not coming to our workshops and are not responding to our survey, and to try to make sure that we are able to connect and hear voices that are kind of unique. This is a little bit of a flavor of what we've been hearing so far from participants at our workshops and through the surveys. Essentially, we've heard that about new housing and how it should, essentially accommodate different incomes, consider affordability, different household sizes, a lot of support for family-sized larger housing units being developed and being placed near transit hubs as well as near bus corridors. We've also heard about residents' need for amenities where they live, near where they live, and walkability being very important. Most folks who have responded to our survey really see themselves as trying to stay and wanting to stay in DC long-term. So those are just a quick summary of what we keep on hearing, some of the themes. Right now, as mentioned, we're in phase 2. So it's exploring how the district should go, where new homes should go. Also a little bit of exploration about other types of uses, where future commercial buildings should go, new future businesses might want to go. And the way that we're talking about the city is through this term called place types. And it's categorizing the city by different descriptions. It's an updated approach to land use policy. And what it will include is recommendations for what a building looks like, what the street surrounding it should look like, and what public spaces around the buildings should look like. We will be releasing a proposed future land use map that summarizes the city categorized by these place types at the March meeting. And that is a key deliverable that we're looking for feedback on. So that will be a proposal. We're looking for people to come to the March meeting and take a look at the proposal and give us feedback on it. And when we will continue to then revise it over the summer months. Why are we doing place types? Essentially, the whole goal for this particular planning process is to increase the user friendliness of the comprehensive plan. Right now, it's a 1,200-page document. We want to make it much shorter and easier to use for the public, so you don't have to have a law degree to read it and understand it and what it means. This is an example of our draft, or this is actually a translation, so this is not what's going to be released in March, but this is what the future land use map looks like, just as an example, so you understand kind of what we're working on right now in our office. And what it's doing is it's categorizing different parts of the city according to the type of development that is essentially being recommended. So much of the city is small scale residential development. And that means, largely the homes there are single family. One of the big questions that we want to explore is where exactly in the city should we be promoting and allowing housing that is a little bit higher density? Where should we be allowing more apartments? What about small scale 4-unit buildings? What about duplexes? And so one of the reasons that we're here is we want to understand from your perspective where your families would want to live in the future and what makes sense to you. And we want to kind of integrate that thinking and those needs and priorities into the planning process as we develop this map. So I'm going to now switch over to our questions. And I think we can try to go around one by one and see if folks have answers in groups. But what I can do is just pause here for just a second before we jump in for questions. And I see Miss Karen has a question.
Hi, Karen. Would you?
Oh, hi. I'm sorry, my mic was off. No, when she was speaking, what I found too is that there's not enough housing for persons with s- physical or even mental disabilities, and particularly those who have very low income. Um, I like to see that, and again, so that we can continually educate the consumer. Services my way. Um, a lot of advertisement or a lot of knowledge about that program is not really out, so that people can make their own decisions about it. But just in terms of housing, I do housing, like we put housing, let's say, in projects in different places in the city, and generally there's only 1 to 3 units that are available for persons with disability. And particularly those who have low to no income. Um, and then how do we filter that in so that it's fair across the board? I know I believe that housing should be where things are accessible. Either transportation's accessible, hospital doctors are accessible. Because if you live at one end of the town and you go to, what is it, Washington Hospital Center for services, that's a big cost. That's a lot of costs. So there's a lot of things that have to be taken into perspective when we talk about housing. Um, and again, when I first introduced myself, is to find ways so people can feel included and valued. Jobs, jobs and housing go neck and neck, particularly as we move forward with what's going on with housing. So that's what I want to know. How in the plan are they conf- confronting that or integrating that into the plan so that people with low or no income can have decent housing or housing that supports their disabilities?
Thank you, Miss Karen.
Alina, do you want to respond to that now, or are you just taking that information, or should we go to Pamela and let her give her? How do you want to do it?
I think we can go ahead and ask Miss Pamela to also offer her feedback. We're taking notes. So Nadia is working on taking notes. And then once we have our initial thoughts and sharing, we can start to go through the questions that we prepared, which cover a lot and respond are very similar to the points that you brought up, Miss Karen.
Thank you.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Why don't you go ahead? Yes.
Okay, great. Again, I'm the housing coordinator here at DDS, and my job is very difficult finding housing for persons because the majority of the people that I work with that are in DDS, their income is just basically SSI, right? So they have very limited income. So that's the dilemma that we're working with, and I think that's for most persons who have a disability, that affordability is a major challenge. So my question to you guys, Elena, is how does the plan calls for the building of more affordable housing, but what's the definition? How does the district, or how are you all defining affordable? Is it based on what, 60% of the AMI, 30%, 20%? And that's the issue that we're having. And I know most persons who are low income need deeply affordable housing in the district.
Mm-hmm.
And my other question is, I wrote down several, let me see. So does the plan also include more public housing, subsidized housing? Or will it include more public housing?
I think that part needs to be put in. I worked a lot with HMIS and coordinated entry with Ms. Kirkland, and there's not a there's not a weighted value for persons with disabilities in HMIS. So with right now, so if a person needed a housing subsidy, a voucher, or some kind of aid or something, and I believe that persons with disabilities should have a weighted value, but it's not. It's the same running field that they have with any other person who's seeking a voucher. And I
Eh,
do agree with her. What is affordability? Um,
would- would- How does the city define it? Or how
yeah.
will the Office of Planning define affordable? Because I
Yeah.
know for a fact, most of the affordable housing programs, our persons cannot afford them.
No.
And my very last question, you talked about focus group. Would it be possible for you all to come to DDS and have a focus group so you can meet with persons who actually with disabilities who are looking for housing, and then you can actually speak directly with them and get their feedback also. We have meet and greets at DDS maybe quarterly, but if you wanted to have, the next one is in April for housing, but we can have one sooner than that if you're interested in coming and having a focus group here. And I can reach out to management and ask if that's feasible.
Great. So let's maybe start with that last question. I think it would be really helpful to connect with your team and see if we could get on the agenda for April. When I share the timeline, I think any input that we get from residents before the end of April would be really timely. It would be perfectly timed to influence all the collecting of information and input in order to refine this map that we're working on over the summer and spring months. So I think, as long as we can fit it in before the end of April, that would be perfect. It would be really great to hear from folks directly struggling to find housing. And we can talk a little more about what that approach might look like and how to host kind of a more sensitive focus group thinking about the background. I will mention we also had a focus group with Project Action back in August. So Self Advocates, and talked a lot about housing as part of that conversation too. To go back to the question about public housing. So, we are not weighing in as part of this planning process on the programmatic aspects of public housing, because that's in the purview of other agencies, specifically DCHA. However, there will likely be policies around like very high level policies around prioritization of, for example, what redevelopment of public housing might look like. Is that a priority for the city over the next few years? And within that, is there like a few more concrete things that we could say about what that redevelopment should prioritize, such as one-for-one replacement of units? So there's a little bit of wiggle room there about weighing in on very high level policy in the plan related to public housing. How the agency defines affordability, a couple points that I wanted to mention. One is we're really aware that most of the units that are generated and that are considered affordable are, really only affordable to people at around 60% of the median family income. And it's much, much harder to reach folks who need deeper affordability to make ends meet. So I think the opportunity here, and you said it yourself, would be to highlight somewhere in the planning process the need for deep affordability. But if you have other advice about language that we should be using to get that point and that concept in there, certainly please lift that up either through this conversation or through an email to me directly after this meeting. Because I think, thinking through what makes sense as far as the language to include that would be most effective, that's very helpful. I think we can jump into some of the questions right now, and I'm going to start with kind of, again, focusing on lived experience. And so there's kind of a number of questions that we're going to ask together that are very related. So if we could start, and we'll kind of call on people perhaps if that works, and kind of go around if we were sitting together in a room in a circle. But we wanted to hear about what neighborhood folks live in, what influenced your choice to live in that neighborhood. For example, did you consider proximity to healthcare, schools, support services, or affordability? What makes this neighborhood work well for your family needs? And then also, if you could change one thing about your neighborhood to make it more inclusive, what would that be? So those are the main questions that we want to start with. And could we, let's see, could we just, I'm going to go down the list, but could we start with Miss Adrienne Smith, if you want to jump in?
Sure. Hi. I live in Ward 3, and I selected that area mainly because of schools, medical access, as well as walkability and grocery options and recreation options. Um, and really, because of the location, it's accessible and easy for my daughter to navigate. Because of living in the neighborhood as a child, I just decided to remain in that area going forward, because um, many individuals, depending on what their challenge is, um, they don't adapt well to change. So that that weighed into my decision as well as feedback from her medical team as
Thank
to
you, Miss Adrienne.
appropriate
What
areas.
makes your neighborhood work well for your family needs?
The location, mainly schools and medical options. Are you able to hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
You should unmute.
We can hear.
So those
Hi. Okay.
We're hearing an echo from you though, Alina. Just wait a moment, everyone. They're just trying to figure out the technical issue.
You can unmute your speaker.
Okay. I think it's better now. Sorry about that. Miss Holiday, can you jump in with the same questions and your thoughts? What neighborhood do you currently live in? What factors influenced your choice to live there? What makes this neighborhood work well or not work well for your family's needs?
Okay, I live in Ward 4, but my brother and the people that I advocate for who have physical and developmental and are who are physically and developmentally disabled live in Ward 5. And so I'll speak for them from a Ward 5 perspective. Ward 5 is has access to transportation, restaurants, and the medical access to the Washington Hospital Center is paramount. They do have a good mix of housing options, meaning single family homes and apartments. And so, for those reasons, I think it's a good place for them. What is becoming more and more difficult is for them to remain in Ward 5 because of the price. They live in an apartment complex. Um, it is not public housing. It's a regular apartment complex. And as rents go up, the negotiations with the owners of the apartments is very difficult because the units are used primarily by college students and things near Catholic University and such. So the competition is steep for housing, and they're wheelchair accessible. We've managed to figure out how to make the restrooms accessible for them because most of them are in wheelchairs. But it's becoming harder and harder to maintain their location. And when you're talking about building new homes and new residences, another issue is the transportation option and the overcrowding of we've got cars, buses, everything is getting squeezed out. We've got bike lanes that are limiting the car access. And the people I support use wheelchair vans, and turning some of those streets into one-way streets, and you're building more and more homes and businesses. It makes traffic jams um, um, almost impossible to deal with. And for example, with the new residences over at the reservoir, they're beautiful and the space is beautiful. It has a nice recreation center and everything. But once those houses are filled, the traffic over there is going to be gridlocked for hours every day. And I just want to bring to the point that with the new buildings and new shops, the infrastructure to support it looks like it's a even larger challenge because what would normally take them, I don't know, 20 minutes to get to their day program will ultimately take at least 45 minutes to an hour to go less than 5 miles. So please keep, I hope, and with Metro cutting down routes and things like that, it's going to become more challenging to navigate this city, especially if you are unable to walk. Walkability is great, but if you're in a wheelchair and you can't walk, not all of the sidewalks have wheelchair ramps. It's harder to get to the metro and things like that. So just please keep those things in mind as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we go next to Mr. or Miss Ora? Apologies if I mispronounced.
It's Chioma Oru, prefer Chioma or Dr. Oru. I don't like Miss, sorry.
Oru.
Or Mr. I'm not a Mr. But I live in Ward 5 and in the Ricks Park neighborhood. I'm a renter. For similar reasons explained before, I have chosen this. Well, this is my preferred neighborhood. I would say that just my zone of comfort. I grew up in DC. This is my area. But the question is, what would I change, right? Or what's
Yeah, what makes
ask me
this
a
neighborhood
specific
work
question.
well for you, I think is also really
Okay.
important. And then also one thing you would change if you could make it more inclusive, what would it be?
Yeah, it's central to the city over here. I can get to anywhere in the city fairly quickly from this location, whether it's east of the river or downtown or anywhere else. I'm also, like I said, familiar with the environment. I know where to get everything I need around here. Um, and it's familiar because a lot of my social contacts are also residing in the same area. My network, my family, close friends, most kind of are around this area currently. Actually, my family is in my building, including my mother. And so it allows for us to maintain cohesion. It's a safe neighborhood. There's a library across the street, a metro around the corner, even though I'm not really big on metro, but it's great for care workers to be able to come in. I have an anxiety disorder, and the subway really is a triggering environment. That's the reason I don't have any personal negative metro experiences. Just it's just not my method to give context to that. And yeah, it's in close proximity, and in terms of safety wise, it's relatively it's one of the safer areas, I believe, in the city, even though we do have we are still in DC, so it is what it is. And it's very close to it's a network of learning environments. My kids go to school in Maryland, however. So it's also very close to the Maryland border, which allows me to be able to access them. If I was in another part of town, like Southeast, it'd be much harder to shoot down to Rockville or Gaithersburg, as I'm very close, I'm much closer as I'm close to the Silver Spring border here. Um, yeah, those are the benefits.
Is there anything that you observe that would make your community more inclusive, neighborhood specifically?
Affordability. Affordability is a huge, I would love to buy, but rent is also killing me. So, it's too expensive. And that's the number one issue. But it would also be nice if there was, real civic coordination, because my building is majority. There's a lot of people with disabilities in this building because providers have corporate leases here. So it would be nice to be able to have, if I had the capacity and can't do everything, but it would be nice if there were community building activities, not even just with the building, with the entire neighborhood, because it's a beautiful historic neighborhood, Riggs Park. And then we're not far from Tacoma. We're in a very historic part of town, which has a history of cohesion, and we're kind of losing that in the way in our practices due to probably gentrification and affordability. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for flagging that Metro is also important for the care workers. That's not something I've heard so far in the conversations we've had. Let's see, can we
Street
jump
parking
to
too. Street parking is better here than when I used to live in Tacoma.
oh, okay.
I used to live closer to the Tacoma neighborhood, and the care workers would always complain. Sorry, they would always complain because street parking was terrible there. But street parking is a little better for caregivers that drive. But a lot of them actually, it's closer to a metro, so it's a bit more accessible that way. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Takunang, do you want to jump in? Hi, Miss Jones, do you want to jump in while we're waiting? I see that you on the screen.
Yes, I don't know what the topic is.
Sure, I can ask the question. So we're introducing ourselves by talking about what neighborhood we live in, and then what factors influenced your choice to live in that neighborhood, such as proximity to healthcare, schools, or affordability, and then what makes the neighborhood work well for your family's needs. If there's one thing you would change to make the neighborhood more inclusive, what would it be?
Okay, well, I'm Taki. I'm a part of the Family Support Council, voting member. I'm still at school, but I finished my meeting. I live in Ward 5, and we'll make it better where I live at is that these darn kids will stop breaking windows in my neighborhood. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else that you would want to share about what makes the neighborhood work well for your family's needs?
Hold on, my teacher's talking. My principal's talking to me. I'm sorry, my principal was talking to me. What's your question, ma'am?
Oh, no worries. The question is there anything that makes the neighborhood work well for your family's needs?
Our neighbors, we really care about each other. Like we know our neighbors, they care about each other. They say hi. We had snow, and my mother and our neighborhood got together to clean the street, and that was very important.
That's great. That's great to hear. Appreciate that. Let's see, Miss Brown, do you want to jump in next? Daisy Brown? Okay, let's see, Miss Carney, are you available to jump in?
Hello?
Hi. Hi, Miss
This is
Daisy.
Daisy Brown again. Yes. With regard to the topic that we're discussing, neighborhoods have changed all over the city, and that's because time goes on. Are relying on assistance from the city to have their residences. I'm lucky, a lot of people aren't, and I understand that a lot of times there are changes in funding. Right now, a lot of citizens in the district are experiencing something like that. Everybody lives somewhere ideal, but right now, if they're in certain situations that are provided by the city, and I'm not saying this to abandon them, but most people are saying now, if I have a roof over my head and a warm place to stay, I should complain as much as ever. My situation is totally different. I'm a daughter of the district, born and raised, lived in my ancestral family home for 60 years. I could no live there because of my disabilities. I'm glad that the city is retrofitting buildings, but the retrofit that they're doing for landlords to claim that they're handicap accessible are not quite up to par. As a matter of fact, going downtown government office buildings, and I'm really surprised because the one of the housing outlets that I went to in DC was on 7th and G, and it's put in a retrofit building, and it was horrific to try to access it with a wheelchair. You had to have a guard at the front door that let you in every time. It wasn't even push the button and the door would open. And I was appalled the last time I had to go recertify because that is providing housing services is in a building that people who require accessibility couldn't get into it. It's the building that was down in the intersection of 7th and G for a while, and it's moved since then. But the very fact that buildings allowed that agency to be in there was offensive to me. But now we go somewhere else, and that was like within a year time. It was there for a while because it didn't move from the place it was before. And I understand, agencies have to move occasionally and things should be updated all the time. But I thought that was the most, and forgive this word I use, asinine idea to place a public service agency that provides service to all citizens, especially ones with disabilities, because I am one, that you can't really access. And when you get into the building, it was like you're rolling over unstable floors. Housing should be accessible for not just the employees there, but actually citizens that rely on the process. Because now I'm in a place and we went through all the process. We're a success story, but a lot of people that I advocate for complain to me about housing and how to get out of it. Other people have to say that's something from what I'm listening to here. I'm a happy person, but I know a lot of people that aren't, and they contact me because who should I talk to? What agency do I need to go to? And I try to stay involved so that I tell people, well, you need to start here or you need to start there. I tell those places, and they go in there and they don't get any. Now, I'm not going to say any response, but they don't get all the help they need. And I remind people.
You're breaking up a little bit now. We can't hear you.
I think she might have dropped off, actually.
Why don't we go to the next one and then she can follow up at the end. Alina, is there another person you'd like to hear?
I think one name that's popping out at me that hasn't spoken up yet is Miss Shawnee Jones. Have you had a chance to introduce yourself and chat about your neighborhood and what makes it work for your family or does not would make it work for your family?
Hi, I only briefly introduced myself in the chat, just offering my name. I'm also a part of the Family Support Council. I reside in Ward 1, and I chose this ward because of the grocery stores, the availability of the grocery stores. It's very close to hospitals. Georgia Avenue is actually the snow emergency route, so that helps me out when it snows. And Georgia Avenue also connects multiple neighborhoods, and I think that's very important in case of emergency if I need to evacuate. I would also say that violent crime isn't as high in this neighborhood as my last neighborhood, so that weighed heavily on my decision to move into Ward 1. So far, those same things that I just mentioned work well for my family. If I had to choose one thing to change, it would be the noise. So I would, love to see if we can get some quiet hours in my neighborhood. And that's pretty much it.
Appreciate that, Ms. Jones. Is there anyone else who has not been able to speak up? I know we have one person who's on the phone.
I would like to. I haven't spoken.
Please.
So my name's Craig Lean. I live in Ward 2 in Georgetown. We it's we love living in Georgetown. It's near we live there because my wife works in Georgetown at the university as a psychiatrist for the students there. We rented for a long time because it was too expensive for us to buy. We finally found a sort of a fixer-upper that we were able to afford. We need stability for my daughter because she needs a room that's not right on the street, that's toward the back, so it's not noisy because she has trouble sleeping. She's autistic with an intellectual disability, and it's nice because it's right in the middle of things, so I could take her out. She often uses a wheelchair, so I could take her out and go around Georgetown, and it's very helpful. There's a few things that are difficult about living in Georgetown, though, related to accessibility. One is the roads, and I've raised this with the council as well, with my council member. I've raised it with transportation, but a lot of the roads in Georgetown are two-way roads, and it causes a lot of complications. So, for example, I have a spot right in front of my house that's designated for my daughter. So we have a parking spot for her because she has a wheelchair and she needs that because she can't walk long distances without sitting in the ground, for example, which can pose a safety issue if she does that in the middle of the street or something like that. So it's hard to access my house though, because we live on 31st Street and when you're coming up 31st Street from M Street, for example, it gets blocked because you have cars going both ways and you have cars parked on the side of the road. Her school bus gets blocked all the time. I've even had to go down there and direct traffic to get it so that, because it's a narrow road, to be able to get her school bus up the road. This happens all over Georgetown, other than Dumbarton. You have these two-way roads with parking on both sides. It's really hard to get through. And if you have a larger van because you have someone who has a wheelchair or something like that, it's almost impossible to access. And there's a lot of stress put on the driver, and it's hard to get the buses up. So that's one thing. I don't know why they don't look again at making these roads one way, or finding a way to make them, or maybe only allowing parking on one side of the road or something like that, to make these roads more accessible for people with disabilities or for larger vehicles that are necessary if you have a large wheelchair or something like that. So that's one thing I would raise. The second I would raise is, it would be nice if there's a few parks in Georgetown, Rose Park, for example. There's a couple, but there's nothing. They don't really have apparatuses that work for people with significant disabilities. So it's I've gone to parks where they have for someone with a wheelchair where they can use the park, they can use the swing, they can use something like that. They don't really have anything like that in Georgetown. So they don't have sensory friendly sort of aspects of the playground that could be helpful for someone with autism. I think that would be something that could be a big benefit in my area, and frankly, in every area within DC. And then lastly, and this is, I noticed this yesterday because I take my daughter on long walks. Georgetown's sidewalks are largely brick, and usually if they're maintained, they're fine for being able to push someone on. If they're not maintained, it's almost impossible because of the narrow roads, and because you have a hole essentially in the sidewalk because of the bricks, even if one or two bricks get misplaced. So, that's difficult. But what I noticed was when I walked down Reservoir, up Foxhall, and it was hard with the wheelchair because the sidewalks were so narrow, and they would often have a big pole in the middle of the sidewalk, and I would have to go into the road to be able to walk with her. And that I've seen in other parts of DC in residential areas where the sidewalks are not always wide enough, or they're not even sidewalks, and you're just walking, and it's just very hard to get around. I hope, with planning for 2050, I'm hoping by 2050 this will be addressed. But I would definitely look at the width of sidewalks, making sure there's an accessible path in all of these parks. One last thing is, I'm on the board. This is not Ward 2, but Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens. I'm on their board. And I've raised this with the Aquatic Gardens and with the National Park Service, but this is true for all the DC parks. It's really important that they have a concept of an accessible path in all of these parks. So, for example, you go to Kenilworth, you want to see the beautiful lotuses and lilies. You're in Ward 7. You go in, you want to see, you walk in there. If you have a wheelchair, you're very likely to get stuck in the mud because it's just, particularly during the times of year when you would want to go see those glorious lotuses and lilies. And so, I've been advocating internally, but I would advocate here too. Every park should have an accessible path where at least so that someone with a disability could, and also often people with strollers and older people who might have a cane or a walker or maybe using a wheelchair. It's incredibly important that they be able to see every aspect of the park. Every park should have an accessible path in DC. So those are the main points I wanted to raise.
Thank you so much, Craig. I am going to pivot to the next section of questions. I will also drop them into the chat so people can refer back to them. But I want to talk about accessibility. I think it would be very helpful for our office to understand better when you speak to accessibility. What does that mean to you? What specific features are the most important? We just talked about wider sidewalks as it pertains to either your neighborhood or your own home. What's most important to you? Is it the wider doorways, the ramps, the elevators being included? And then lastly, how do cost and availability of accessible housing impact your choices in the district in terms of where to live? And I was thinking we could transition to going popcorn style, meaning if anyone feels ready to speak, please come off mute and we can just take turns that way, if that works. So again, the questions that we want to think about right now are, what does accessibility mean to you? And then what accessibility features are the most important to you and your family in terms of both neighborhood and your individual housing? And then how does the cost and availability of accessible housing, whatever that means to you, affect your choices?
I'll start. This is Pam Johnson. Working in housing, for me, accessible, if it's not affordable, it's not accessible. Even if you have all the accessibility features, if the person cannot afford it, it's not accessible. So affordability to me seems like, well, based on my experience, it's a necessity.
Thank you, Miss Pamela.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go. I thought raise my hand. I think it's Chioma. Again, I want to echo that affordability is accessibility, but I also want to frame it in the context that part of me staying in DC as a renter is because my children are able to access services in the district, whereas transitioning to moving would cost me much more than money. It would cost me access to services. It will cost me a huge transition. So it would be great if there was some kind of tax consideration to that reality that we stay, those of us, that stay in the city because it is accessible. And then on another level, I've had to create the accessibility, and I'm going to explain. I literally had to file a human rights complaint against my landlord to require the front staff to be able to understand what ADA accommodations mean. So after going through that painful process of literally training my environment to respond to me and my community, it would take a lot for me to move, and rent keeps going up. So it's very helpful, accessible wise if you're a renter, that the property management people understand ADA and are in compliance and go through well, my building, they're required to go through training when new staff are onboarded for different accommodation needs, including, it's a wide range of things. So we have a very accessible building now in terms of when you have requests to have things either delivered if you can't make it to the front, to be able to access the swimming pool, to be able to access events and activities. Like there are many things that happen in the building. And so that's important for apartment living. And yeah, that's my contribution.
That's very helpful. Really appreciate that. Anyone else want to jump in on the accessibility piece?
Yeah, this is Taki. I'm sorry, I'm in my school and someone's talking. Yeah, so I live in a neighborhood and I catch Metro access. But I don't have a problem with that because my house is coming straight down. And when I did have a partner with a disability, they had a problem coming to my house to use the bathroom because we don't have accessibility. And I told them, go to the bathroom at your job because my house doesn't have it. So it wasn't like I was being rude. It's just that my house doesn't have accessibility. Okay, so I hope that wasn't mean. Thank you.
And then I would like to add one thing too. To me, what accessibility means is it's that you're able to be part of something or be included in something without need for an accommodation. So you don't have to go forward and say, oh, I'm going to need this accommodation or that accommodation. Instead, because of almost the concept of universal design, but the idea that things have been designed, it empowers you because you can just go and you can be there and it's easy. It doesn't require you to rely on other people to open the door for you or to drive you somewhere and to park in a very difficult parking situation. It's very easy so that hopefully someone can do it themselves. And of course, access goes beyond disability. It touches on socioeconomic issues and a variety of things. But in the disability context, that to me is what it is. You're able to be included more easily, and that it's a fundamental principle of what's being provided, that itself is important, not just that you're giving a great play or you're having a wonderful movie or you're having a beautiful orchestra, but that as important is that people are able to access and enjoy it without a burden or without stress. So that to me is a big part of accessibility. And I'll tell you, one of the big ones that I see is with parking in DC. It's hard to find disability parking. It's just there are not enough spots.
Does anyone else want to weigh in? And I appreciate the definition of empowering you so you can go, and that it's easy to really enjoy life without a burden and without stress. That actually made me think of a different term in the housing world that we use called housing cost burden, and that speaks to more affordability. And if you have access to affordability, then you do not have a housing cost burden, is one thing that we think about or talk about a lot. So I was curious, in terms of this accessibility within housing, beyond the affordability piece, which totally makes sense as the number one, are there other really important aspects of accessibility within housing that we should be lifting up or thinking about?
And you have Karen and Shani with their hands up.
Sure. Shani, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I think in addition to affordability being a priority, we also need to consider amenities. And not just within the homes, but within the communities. So things like grocery stores, parks, transportation, specifically hospitals, and then just overall community spaces. I think those are just as important.
Thank you so much. I noticed that you said particularly hospitals and just healthcare facilities in general kind of fall under that category.
Yeah, hospitals, if you want to talk about support services, which would also, for our population, it could include psychiatric treatment, inpatient, things of that nature. We don't always have real, true, adequate spaces either within hospitals or sometimes even within psychiatric, they still call them institutes, where we can access resources in an emergency. So those type of settings are also important.
And when you mentioned community spaces, what were you thinking of?
Honestly, office buildings, a lot of there's many properties in DC that are simply just abandoned. A lot of big name agencies have come in and, taken over some of the buildings, made them conjoined workspaces, and within a year or two, they're abandoned. So those can be turned into community spaces. For instance, some of the newer high-rise apartments, they have community spaces within the buildings, if that makes
Okay, so
sense. So you can go,
spaces for programs, for community building programs.
yeah, it can be for programs, it can be for birthday parties, it can be for meetings, it could be for simple gatherings, things of that nature.
Okay. Thank you. Karen, do you want to jump in?
I agree with most things people said. Affordability is accessible. It has to be affordable. And the things that neighborhoods should have, the grocery stores, the hospital, um, mental access is great, but maybe someone may just want to go out, just take a regular bus or take the train. All those things that should be included and it being accessible so that you want to get a person's is close to, I don't want to use the word normal, but so that there's no difference. It's no difference in how they're treated because that the resources are the same. Usually it's very limited. You go to the supermarket, there's 2 wheelchairs to help someone, but there may be 4 or 5 people who need one. Those kind of things that there's always a limited number. Like I said, when I'm doing housing, any public housing is only 1 to 3 units, and normally there aren't any available. And those, it's a word I'm working, in order for them to elevators in terms of they've done a lot of renovation, but the elevators is still a big thing if you're low income. Yeah, and that 1 first floor apartment may be gone. So those are the kind of things I need to have it addressed. And again, anything that would allow a person to become normalized in society. Jobs. A lot of people with disability want to work. And that way they can maybe afford a better place. All those things, I think should be taken into account.
Thank you so much. I had one follow-up question. You mentioned supermarkets and access because of the number of wheelchair or other options available to navigate the supermarkets. I wanted to ask about the location of supermarkets in everybody's neighborhoods, and if there could be something that we think about where supermarkets are specifically located within our neighborhoods that would make them more easy to access from people's homes.
Right.
For example, should we be thinking more about putting the supermarkets in the same building as apartments, or what other factors do you think could make supermarkets and grocery stores more accessible?
I like the idea of having it on the lower floor of the building. Some of the, Whole Foods, something that would be accessible, not like a mom and pop store, but a real supermarket in a very close vicinity. Supermarket, CVS, things that people normally that you need.
I would add for Georgetown, obviously there's no metro rail, so that always is an accessibility issue in Georgetown. But also, they don't really have any markets. I mean, there's like Streets Market on P, but a lot of the markets have closed that are within Georgetown proper. There's not a big supermarket in Georgetown. You have to go all the way up
No.
to Safeway up on Wisconsin, up the hill, which is hard for someone in a wheelchair to get to. So it would be great if there were more local marketplaces that could be accessed easily.
Right. That's the same thing about the wharf. You have to go all the way up to M Street, I think, in terms of there's one Safeway there, but right, the wharf proper, there are no uh, grocery stores or markets.
One side, exit Purgatorio on the other side, both making a cooked tomato sauce.
Before we jump to the next section of questions, does anyone else want to jump in on this accessibility definition?
Yeah, this is Taki.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, sweetie. You can go.
Okay. Yeah, in reference to accessibility for grocery stores, I do believe that the ground floor retail is a great option. I also think that there should be consideration or interest around community pantries, food pantries, and fridges. And within my neighborhood, we actually have businesses that have opted in to becoming a community fridge. And you can either order food from one of the online fresh fruit deliveries. You can get it cooked or you can get it just prepared. And then you have the option of going to that fridge, giving your information, and getting the food out of those fridges. I would also like to see more of community gardens and even farming. I know a few of the schools have gardens behind them, but I think we need to expand beyond grocery stores, because what has happened in the city is these large food chains have come in specific wards, and then they close or they minimize the availability of either products themselves or brands, just under the notion of theft. And that impacts the entire neighborhood. So I think additional resources to food other than grocery stores should also be considered.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing up the delivery piece of it too. I know I literally this morning heard someone talking about that in our office, and how that might be impacting the future of how people access food. Taki, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I live on Michigan Avenue on 12th and Taylor. And I really wish that I can bring my friends who are in wheelchairs in Mary and Paul's. It's a really good restaurant, and I don't think they can put their wheelchairs in because the food is really good and it's nice to cheap. So maybe some restaurants, they can do a wheelchair or stuff like that. So I don't know if y'all ever heard of Mary and Paul's.
I have not been there, but I've heard of it. It's like a diner, right? A little bit like a diner on 12th Street.
Yes, it's a diner.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna pivot to the last kind of section of questions, and this is really thinking about the future. And the two questions really are connected. Thinking ahead, where do you ideally want your family member, child, whoever you are caring for to live in 10 or 20 years? What type of housing do you envision for them? Where in the district? And if it's not the district, please share that as well. And what would make the community and the neighborhood feel safe, supportive, and accessible?
Yeah, this is Taki. So I want to go to school in Connecticut, or maybe Massachusetts or Landmark College. They have a really good college, people with disabilities, and it's really cold up there. But I think maybe in a couple of 10 or 15 years, me and my mother can be up there, and I can be at college and won't have to pay out-of-state tuition. Thank you.
Thank you.
For me, my daughter goes to St. Coletta, but she's 21, so in a year she's gonna have to transition out of her school. So we're looking at adult day programs. Um, at some point, we would like her to be able to live on her own too, either in a group home or in a um, supportive facility of some sort, but one that's, bright and happy and that makes her happy and where we can obviously visit her easily. Mostly because, we're not going to live forever. So, we need to make sure that she's in a spot that's sustainable for her for a long time. But that, for parents, that's obviously and for our council, that's the biggest thing. Like you want to make sure your child's in the right place. I wish that there were more places near me that she could potentially live in. I haven't, all the options we've heard about are far away. So, I mean, they're in DC, but they're not that close and they would be harder to get to. So, I mean, we'll do it obviously, but it would be nice if there were more group homes and community living places that were closer to where we are. I'm sure everyone wants that. And that's
Thank you,
always the
Craig.
big issue with zoning, I know, is trying to, unfortunately, discrimination against group homes and things like that, even though the Supreme Court has been so clear that they should be welcome in every zone and in every residential community. So I'd like to see more of that, more group homes.
I would love to talk a little bit more about everyone's experiences with group homes. I wanted to understand a little bit more about when we say group homes, what do we mean? Are we talking about shared communal spaces and then independent bedrooms? Are we talking about potentially a number of independent apartments or a roommate situation? And then any kind of challenges that you've heard of specifically with new group homes being added in the district?
Together, we can tackle blood shortage.
This is Karen. I know a little bit about that certified residential facility, and that's what under housing we use sort of as a group home for persons with disability. I don't think they're triaged as well as they need to be. Like you have an SR, SRR, or TI, depending on the person's level of what they're capable of. I'm like those, and another thing about the group home experience too is that if the person does get SSI or SSDI, the majority of their money is taken. It's $70 to $100 they get back. Even if they're high functioning, and maybe you want to do something else, same amount of money. And again, the getting into well certified an SRO, a certified residential facility, you have to be connected to a CSA, a community support agency. In order to do that, they make it a little more complicated than what is necessary to do. But I think what the real hesitation is about is the fact that they take all the money. And if you're moving towards any brand of independence, you need more than $100 in your pocket, and some large ones you only get $78. And I don't see a person being able to survive on that for a month, even though their food is included and your most of them, your food, laundry is included in your room, and usually it's a shared room with an SRO. And if you have SSDI, you might have close to $2,000 a month. Someone else may just have SSI. That may be $900 a month. Everybody's still the same thing.
Thank you, Ms. Karen. Is there anyone else who would want to jump in?
I would
Yeah.
like to. This is
Oh, go ahead. I'm
Alicia.
sorry.
I'm sorry, I couldn't raise my hand. But the people I support moved from the group home to supervised apartments where they have roommates. Each person has their own room in a 2-bedroom apartment, and they have very limited uh, ability. So the care providers come in and they fix their meals, help them prepare for their day, and take them out on outings and things. And I thought at one time that the city was moving away from group homes altogether and moving to the more community in moving toward more community integration by moving them into apartments or places that they would be living with other I'll say more able-bodied people, and that has been working out well. The company that manages their care is very fair with the amount of money they don't the people I support don't have the same needs as someone, or the same abilities as someone who's more able-bodied to control their money. And but I know there are situations where if you were to find that kind of supervised apartment, that you would be able to come and go more freely. You would have access to your money, especially if you're working. You would have a budget and that type of thing. So I think it has a lot to do with the provider or the person who's coordinating the care. And being in the city, I grew up here, and I've seen DDS make lots of changes over the years for people with disabilities. I think moving away from the group home is a good thing because it allows more independence. If you're more able-bodied and can manage your money and can travel on your own and earn your money, you should have more control over it. And they have integrated into the community very well. I think it's something to look for if you're looking for care for a child who's eventually going to have to live on their own or live in a situation where they're not in your home any longer. If you talk to some of the service providers in the city, I'm sure there are several who follow that model, and you might be able to find what you need there.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Do you have a specific model in mind that we should be looking at to understand how to describe specific policies in the plan? And the North Star, like a provider, a service provider, a developer that's doing a particularly fantastic job?
I would contact RCM of Washington. They manage the care for the people I support, and they do have a couple of group homes, but they're in Ward 8. But most of their people are in living situations where they're in supervised apartments as opposed to group homes.
Okay. Anyone else want to jump in? I know we're almost at time.
I do. I want to add to this piece of the conversation. Again, this is Shawnee. My son is 21. No, he's not. He's 23. I'm sorry. He's 23 with autism. I've been trying to figure out what housing or permanent housing looks like for him prior to my death. And the housing model that I envision, it looks very similar to the current supportive living housing model within DDS. It's just a few things that I thought would complement or honestly provide him with the more choice or decision making with his housing. And the model that I believe would work for him is a caregiver model. So I would have my other children and family and friends to actually be able to come in and assist with ADLs. And I would rather do this with another family so that we can share the responsibilities, or that our families could share the responsibilities. It gives them more choice to take vacations, keep more of their money. I think the most important thing would be the oversight would be
eggs up the lobster to
the
row.
loved ones versus the actual agency.
Like she
And then the most complicated piece is trying to figure out how to do this with little to no Medicaid waiver support. So more of an independence model, but with still some support that would give him just choice over what he did on a daily basis and where he went and how much of his money he can actually keep.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone that I missed that wanted to weigh in on this last question? Okay, I think we can pause here. I will first just say thank you. Thank you everyone for sharing a little bit about your family, the neighborhood that you live in, and some of your ideas for what your family member may need or the person that you care for may need in the future. I think it was very illuminating. There's a lot more to dig into here. I know we were only able to kind of scratch the surface. I will drop my email into the chat here, and I can also follow up with those who registered by email. We have two workshops coming up at the MLK Library. They are on March 18th and 21st. We would welcome you to join us to learn more about this project and share more about your thoughts from your perspective. If there's anything else that you want city planners to know about housing for families and individuals with disabilities, please reach out. Don't hesitate. I think how we frame policies that are in this plan, that's very important. And if you can help us shape some of our wording, I think that's super helpful. Really appreciate your time with us today.
I have one more quick question, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Okay. So it's about the comprehensive plan. Does that also include planning for senior housing?
Yeah, so we're actually doing quite a bit of focus groups similar to this one with seniors in partnership with DACL. We're going to a number of wellness centers around the city to have conversations with older residents of the district on kind of similar topics and themes.
And the reason why I asked that, is it feasible to think about housing, developing housing that's inclusive, more so housing for persons with disability like we do for seniors, but maybe mixed use?
Mixed use from the perspective of what's available in the building, like if there are other types of retail and businesses in the same building.
Mixed use in the sense of the type of residence. So instead of a senior, it would be a building for persons with disability, but say maybe 50% for persons with disabilities and everyone else. So it wouldn't be solely for, and I'm not quite sure if you could do that. Would it be considered discrimination if you had a building just for persons with disability? But I know it's done for seniors. So that was just one of my, I was thinking about that.
Pamela, just to make sure I understand correctly what you just said, you were saying that you would want to see more buildings that are dedicated specifically to individuals with disabilities, or are you saying more buildings that have some units dedicated to persons with disabilities, whereas the rest of the units are actually for the general public?
Whichever is feasible, but whatever is possible. I'm not quite sure if we can do that. Would it be considered discrimination if you had a building just for persons with disabilities? But I know it's available for seniors, so that's why I asked. I'm not quite sure what the law allows, but if it's feasible, that would be great, because we do need more housing, more affordable housing for persons.
Yeah, I think the category that I'm thinking of is permanent supportive housing, but often that is really narrow. And I wonder if you're thinking more expansively about people's needs.
I would just add, I work in this area on the civil rights area, and yes, you are allowed to have housing dedicated to people with disabilities. It's not considered, it's a protected class, people with disabilities, but people without disabilities is not a protected class. So you are allowed to favor in housing, employment, and in other areas, people with disabilities. And of course, you always are trying to integrate or include them in the community as much as possible, at the same time making sure you provide the supports that are needed. So, definitely I'm hoping to see more housing for people with disabilities.
Okay. And have we thought about inviting DBH, since they do the certified residential in terms of mental health disabilities, or They provide that housing. Has DDS and DBH ever merged so they can talk about they do different ends of the same thing? But at least invite them to one of our meetings so that you can get what they're doing. But I know the population they work with mostly are mental disabilities and intellectual disabilities, where DDS is, I don't know if one has like, once you get to one end of the spectrum, then you have to go to a different agency. But I would really like to hear how they, since they do have the vouchers, they do have they have the housing choice vouchers, and they have the certified residential facilities, the group homes. You know, I would really like to hear from them in this space.
And we used to have, and they changed some of the structure for DBH. There used to be a representative that did attend the Family Support Council meetings. And we don't have a new designee as of right now for this group, but there are different things going on kind of behind the scenes to coordinate for folks, because there certainly is lots of overlap for folks that have behavioral health conditions and maybe have an intellectual or developmental disability. But open to ideas about where some of the gaps are for that. And some of that's around employment, some of that's around returning citizens, some of that's around children in foster care, lots of different spaces where there's some overlap and some coordination as a very broad brush. And I'll say two more things. So one of the other, when you're planning for some of this, and it's interesting when you think about 2050 versus next year, what funding will look like, because right now there are some limitations for people that get home and community-based services through Medicaid on the density of people with disabilities to be considered a community setting. So like CMS, Centers for Medicaid and Medicare, don't want people to get isolated or to be forming something that looks like an institution in the way that they're housed. So there's some of those things that are also competing priorities for what those impacts would be for the kind of housing you create. But if you're looking 20 years out, who knows what that's going to look like at that point? That there are some of those things that are also important for people who want to get services and may have some other impacts of some policies related to the setting that they're living in. But it's really hard to project that looking that far out, if it'll look like it does today or very, very different. And Tanya was trying to, I've gotten a message from her. She wanted to try to share something, was having trouble unmuting by phone. I'm going to try asking her to unmute. And if you're able to stay on just a couple more minutes. Is that feasible, Elena?
I'm thinking I got to set my game on.
Yes, no
Okay.
problem. We can stay
Hello?
until a little longer.
Okay, Tanya, we
Thanks.
got you.
Okay, you guys can hear me now?
We can.
Oh, okay, thank you. Because I was confused. I kept on trying to speak over the course of the phone call. So thank you for helping me with that. I just wanted to say that when it comes to housing, we live in Ward 4. And when it comes to housing, it's very confusing because my son signed up for resources for housing through DBH, I'm assuming. And then out of nowhere, the list just disappears and they have no explanation. And I'm thinking he's probably been on that list since 2015, I want to say. And then it just disappears. And I think it's unfair to families because I've had to raise, like my family, because of course I have other relatives. And when you got to raise them in the same environment, it's not always comfortable, if that makes sense. And you want to eventually get them their own environment with Services My Way coming out in 2018. It's been very helpful for him, with getting day-to-day help, but he also needs his own environment because he may need OT services, physical therapy where he can have his own space, as families are growing and you have babies and, little kids and all of that, I just think that it's important for persons with disabilities to have their own environments. And for my son, I'm not against group homes, but he has traumatic brain injury, and I definitely would not like to have him in a group home at all. I would love to have him in his own environment, preferably maybe a small little home, 2-bedroom or so, where someone can stay there with him having, the services, and he can have his own environment, because that's what he grew up in. And then I found if he knows eventually he has to get housing, because at this point I'm 54 and been going through this for maybe 12 years or so. So as he gets, as I get older, he could have his own environment where I feel that he should be able to be safe and comfortable, not really sharing any type of environment, because when you have traumatic brain injury, it's different, in my opinion. It's kind of a silent thing if people don't understand you, or even if it's really considered, to be important to people, because I've been on my own for quite some time. And so those are just the things I wanted to mention. And also, when I noticed if he's in a bigger apartment building or something, then that could cause a problem for other people versus maybe a small 4-unit. And that's it. Those are the things I wanted to speak on.
Flavor serves the roe, lobster again, slightly undercooked. I think it's an audacious dish.
Hello?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Oh, okay. No, I'm done now. I'm just done. I'm sorry. I'm finished.
Definitely a good piece of butter with breadcrumb. I bet there's not too much sauce here. And it allows the lightness of the turnip noodles, whatever you want to call it.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate hearing from all the variety of perspectives in this room. Craig, do I pass it back to you and Catherine to wrap up?
Yes. So thank you, Alina. We are so, and Nadia, we're so grateful for coming today and prioritizing working with our council and the community we serve. We're very grateful. We're open to additional engagement, and maybe if we know of larger meetings, we were talking about events that we have, maybe with DC 2050 having a table or things like that. We'll keep you updated. And we're interested in answering additional questions. If you send us questions, responses from our council as well. That's one of the roles that we play, and we want to play. We're happy to play it. So ask us anything you'd like, and at the next meeting, we'll send you back a response. So, and we can email it to you too through Catherine. So, Catherine, is anything else? Thank you, Alina. Any final words?
Final words I dropped in the chat for people who were talking about vouchers and priorities for who should get some of the resources coming in. So we're having performance hearings now for all the different government agencies. We're doing that. And I'll put the general link in there too. So if you have some of those comments, you can certainly either register to testify if the hearing hasn't happened yet, and if it happened less than 2 weeks ago and you haven't submitted testimony and you want to, you can go ahead and submit some written testimony for some of those agencies that you may want to share, your experience, good, bad, or your future needs. This is an opportunity to let the DC Council know that and let the agency leadership get that feedback. So I dropped in the chat the stuff directly related to housing, and then I'll drop in the chat the general calendar so that you can find the agencies that you may want to make some comments about.
Thank you. As for the remainder of the meeting, I don't believe we have a quorum, do we? We have a lot of turnout, but I don't know.
I think at some point you did when Chioma was here, you did for an amount of time. But yeah, I think we may want to post. Yeah, we may want to post it even if it wasn't.
I think we should post it.
Yeah, we'll still post it even if it's something that was a little iffy.
We didn't need a quorum today because it was just it was more informational for DC 2050, and then to provide input from us individually.